Hello, everyone. Hi, Carlos. How are you? Hey, guys. I do recognize some people in the audience. So, hi, my name is Ricardo. I come from Porto, Portugal, and I'm here to talk about SRE anti-patterns, and one in specific, the rebranding of the operations team, which I recognize is probably one of the most common anti-patterns, not only for SRE, but SRE is suffers from that as well. So, let's talk a little bit about it. So what are we going to talk about today? So a very brief introduction to what is SRE. So we're at SREday, so I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with. But we're going to briefly give it as context. We're going to talk about what are anti-patterns and why they are dangerous. We'll then talk about the anti-pattern that we're here to talk about, which is the rebranding of the operations team. And we're going to talk about solutions to that anti-pattern and how we are doing at my company. So why SRE? You might think that was some kind of a big bang, something that happened and then we got SRE, but it was not really the case. So through time, we've gotten certain evolutions that got us to this place. So in the 80s, we got TCP/IP standardized, which allowed us to have a standardized way to have computers communicating with each other. And that meant that we had an easier way to start building more and bigger systems. Then came the 90s, the World Wide Web, companies just starting to put stuff online, systems getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You probably heard of the dot-com boom around the initial early, years of the 2000s, but some of those companies survived. Some of those companies you probably heard about, companies like Google, Amazon, those types of companies. And those companies started getting bigger and bigger and more complex and started having problems with the way that it did ops and the way that they developed software and the way that they run it in production. So they started having, okay, we need to find a better way to do this. So what were the kind of problems that they were having? So software and system architecture was getting more complex. Systems started to increase highly in scale. So the traditional way of doing ops versus devs didn't work. And we started having non-scalable engineering solutions. So at some point in time, maybe I run a script from my machine that affected like 10 servers. Now I have 10,000 servers. It won't work, right? So we need better solutions. So around 2003, inside Google, someone was tasked to, let's try and fix this problem. So how are we going to approach this? So what if we put software engineers in front of an operations problem? What will happen? Let's see. So what were some of the principles that they were trying to tackle with this? So they were tackling stuff like embracing risk. So we know that there will be risky stuff. Let's embrace it. Let's not try to account for everything that is happening. Let's assume that risk exists, there will be problems, and we will deal with it. They also tackled something like, we know that we need a way to define, measure, and assess reliability. If we're talking about reliability, we need to define it and find a way to measure it. So they developed the framework, SLOs. They work on eliminating toil. Toil is a concept of work that needs to be done but doesn't offer an enduring value. For example, manual deployments. It needs to be done. Deployments need to be done. But if I do them manually over and over again, it doesn't scale. So I need to find a way to fix that. Of course, all of this comes bundled with monitoring. How do I know if my systems are behaving well or not? What if I know if it's even down? Automation. How do I scale the things that I do? How do I get more bang for my buck? And of course, release engineering. How I get stuff in front of people. How do I do these deployments? How I do deployments without sending everything down? If there's a problem, how do I roll it back? And of course, striving for simplicity. How can I make the simplest solution that developers and engineers can use to make all this kind of stuff? Where do we stand around SRE today? So SREday, so this is a good point. So everyone knows about SRE, but probably everything started around SRE being more and more popular around 2016 with the book on the right. So Google released the SRE book. If you read it at a time as I did, you got a little bit confused because it's awesome. So the good point is that it's awesome. Google is one of the most successful organizations in the world in terms of engineering. So getting a sneak peek of how they do things internally is great. So we can see, okay, these guys are really good. This is how they do things. The counterfactual to that, or the counter argument to that is, first of all, there's a lot of stuff in there. There's more than 30 chapters in there. So it's sometimes hard to just, okay, what are they even talking about? So how can I translate that into my own reality? And of course, organizations like Google have problems that most of our organizations don't have. So it's sometimes hard to make that translation between, okay, Google does this way. How does this actually mean to my reality? From that, Google released more books like the workbook and the building secure and reliable systems, and it got us closer to how Google did things. But we got into this thing of, okay, we have a lot of information, and because there's a lot of stuff, and it's sometimes hard to make that translation between what Google or the Amazons or the Facebook, the big ones, do into our own reality, we sometimes, because something gets hype, we just adopt something. So before we go into the anti-pattern, let's talk a little bit about what anti-patterns are. So I do have here two definitions of what an anti-pattern is, but I like the one on the bottom better from Martin Fowler. And it reads something like the following. So an anti-pattern is a solution that initially looks like something that is an attractive road lined with flowers, but further on leads you into a maze filled with monsters. So the idea here is that an anti-pattern is not something that we do out on purpose. It's something that we know that this is bad, but I'm going to do it anyway. So ideally, an anti-pattern is something that we look at and say, okay, seems like a good idea, but eventually it will have some problems down the line. To make an example of this and to strive this point even further, one of the issues with anti-patterns is that the patterns of today can also turn themselves into the anti-patterns of tomorrow. So I'm pretty sure that you're all familiar with this lineup of the keyboard, the query keyboard, but does anyone know why we do have this format and not another format? Yeah, yep, that's a good point. Because of the typewriter, right? So we do have the QWERTY keyboards on our computers that we use nowadays because of typewriters. And the biggest reason why we have this layout is because of the needles of the typewriter. The keys are arranged in a way to minimize the hitting of the needles against each other, right? We don't have needles anymore, but we're still using that. We already know from experience and from several studies that this is not even the best layout that we have for typing. We have other layouts that we type faster. Another reason why we have this layout is that at that point in time, people need to use one hand for typing and another hand to do stuff manually, like to transcribe and all that kind of stuff. So that meant the keyboard is also optimized to just write with one hand. Okay, so you can see that something that was optimized back in time, that was the pattern, then those constraints disappeared, and now we have a pattern. Now we have a new pattern, which is we can consider that it could be an anti-pattern, because if we have better ways to type faster, why are we still using that pattern? We got so used to that. This is just an example. It's not a very pernicious one, but it's something that can also happen in our organization. So we get used to doing things a certain way, and we just keep doing it because that's the way that we do things. And this leads us to our anti-pattern, right? So our anti-pattern is what I call the rebranding the operations team. Is where you have some form of operations team, whatever you want to call them, infrastructure engineers, production engineers, whatever it is. You rebrand it to another name. In this case, now you guys are SRE, and that's it. You change nothing else, or you change very little about it, but now you are SREs. I usually generalize this to rebranding IX to Y, because you can see this in a lot of other places. So Agile, you're now doing stand-ups. You are an Agile team. Not really, right? You're doing CI/CD, or you're doing some form of automation, so you have CI/CD. Not really, again. So, and we can keep going on and on about this. But it's this idea that we just stick a new name into something that we used to do, and we're good to go. That's not how it works. So why is this bad? Why is this an anti-pattern, right? So, for the most part, you usually have a failure to realize benefits, right? So if you're adopting a new practice and you have no idea or have little idea of what you're doing, you fail to realize the true benefits of that new practice. You lack authenticity and lack understanding. So I am SRE, but I don't really know what SRE is. So is this even authentic? What are we talking about? I don't understand what this is. You're probably also kind of inefficient and wasting resources. So you just do rebranding. So you have a new team. You probably have engineers. You hire people within the SRE team, but you don't really know what you're doing. People usually get discontent. You have some culture clash. So you now have an SRE team. What's their role? What is their responsibility? What about the old team, or what about the things that we used to do? You have confusion, probably loss of trust, and reputation. It's not uncommon to have a rebranding of the team. You hire new engineers from outside the company. They get, okay, this is not what I thought SRE is, so you guys are doing the same thing that you were doing 20 years ago, so what did actually change? This is kind of a rebranding. So, how can we fix this? First and foremost, we can educate ourselves, right? So there's a lot of literature around SRE. These are just 3 examples of books that are out there. There are a lot of courses, a lot of blog posts being written almost every single day about SRE. Now platform engineering, probably tomorrow something else. But educate ourselves. Let's see what others are doing. Going to meetups, going to conference, understand what's being done, what problems are you facing, how are you solving those? Just getting that knowledge with us. Also, as important as educating ourselves is to understand why we're doing this. So I usually make a distinction here that most organizations trying to onboard, be it SRE, platform engineering, they either have a problem that they're trying to fix or they want to improve something, right? So understanding why. Why do we want to onboard SRE practice or whatever practice we want? Why? Not just rebranding, calling SRE, but try to figure out, do we have a problem that we're trying to fix? Are we trying to improve on something? And that will help a lot with those, to bring the practice that we want. Then you'll start to prioritize work, right? If you read the SRE book, more than 30 chapters, you can't possibly face or tackle everything that is in there. So you need to know what you are going to attack and deliver. So just 2 examples of stuff that we can use to prioritize work. So the Pareto principle, just seeing what is the 20% of stuff that will bring me 80% of the results. Or using something like the Eisenhower matrix, where I classify the stuff that I can or potentially could do, and using that classification, what is important and urgent, what is important and not urgent, and so on and so forth. Just having an idea of all the things I could possibly do, what are some of the things that I could put in each bracket and attack those things. If you don't have any idea of where to invest some of your time, just invest in observability. This is true for any organization, any size, any size, but it's even more important for SRE. So if you want to do any change, so am I getting better? Am I getting worse? This thing's still the same. If I have a problem, can I even understand what the problem is? Can I even know where things are? So investing in observability is always a good option. And last but not least, have some form of a reliability framework. Why do I say this? If you're responsible for making or ensuring that your systems are responsible, you need a way to actually define what reliability is, to measure it, and then assess it on a regular basis. If not, you will have teams having discussions about, oh, for me reliability means this, for me reliability means that. You have not an easy way to prioritize work. You don't have an easy way to have an informed discussions about, okay, reliability for us means this, and we are being reliable or not. So being a little bit more practical, how are we approaching this at our organization? So I work for the Flutter Group, which is the parent company of some of the biggest brands in betting. Some of the brands here in the UK that are under the Flutter Group, you probably know, like PPB, Skybet, PokerStars are some of the popular brands. I work for a specific brand, which is called FanDuel, which is the biggest sports book offering in the US. We also have offerings in casino and fantasy and racing. And I work specifically for the sportsbook side of things. And I work out of the Flutter's office in Porto, Portugal, at Bleep. And why am I showing this? First and foremost, shout out for my company for sponsoring my trip here, but also to give you guys an idea that we work in a complex environment. So it's not a matter of us getting there, getting a team, you guys are SRE, and just doing things, right? So how are we approaching this? And this is how we started, yeah? So why? So we formed the team last year. As you probably can guess, Flutter is a big group, FanDuel is a big organization, we have thousands of engineers, so why are we even doing this, right? So there's no point in starting something new. As you might have guessed, we have lots of teams doing lots of stuff like automation, DevOps engineers, networking engineers, performance engineers. We have a lot of people. So why are we doing this? So the way that we approach this is we will do whatever we can to, one, make our engineers more confident with our services and make our customers happy with our products. That was our main goal, our North Star, if you want to go it. This is vague enough to allow us to do whatever the hell we want, but has a very important aspect here. We have a focus on our engineers and our customers, and not a focus on something like specific, like you guys are now the observability team or something like that. No, the goal is to whatever we have to do to accomplish these goals. So I'll now mention 3 things that we are attacking, so to speak, with the perspective of stuff that, one, we thought could be improved, other stuff that we kind of thought, yeah, this is a little bit neglected, so we can help this, and other stuff like, yeah, we think this is important and no one is really looking at it. So first, incident management. So here is something that, of course, the organization was doing, but yeah, we think we can help. We think we can make this better. So things that we were involved in with this. Process definition. So we did have the process, but the process was a little bit convoluted, and we thought we could streamline this. We can make this easier. It can make it more approachable for engineers. So we worked with our service management team to actually make it easier and understandable for engineers. Incident response. We started getting involved with incident response, being on call, being with teams, just being there, providing whatever necessary, and understanding what were the gaps that engineers were having when they were managing an incident. Was it around observability? Is it something that they need to do, but it's not easy to do, so they take a lot of time? So being involved in incidents. And of course, postmortems. Postmortems are something that are very important, learn from failure. More than anything else, to start to instill the culture that postmortems are not finger pointing. It's something that we do to get better. It's not because the service from team A failed. It's about, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, what can we do to improve it? Something that we found out that we were using but was a little bit neglected was around observability. So we use a SaaS provider. So you might think, okay, you guys use a solution from the cloud, so how do you guys think this is neglected? There's a lot of stuff that needed to be done around here. So first and foremost, it is a SaaS offering, but it's still a tool that someone needs to understand how to use it, right? And there was no one actually owning it. So we took upon ourselves, let's own this. Let's understand how the tool works, and let's help engineers work with this tool. So we work a lot around tooling. How can we automate a lot of stuff? How can we make dashboards automatically, magically appear on our tool? How can, for example, we can onboard other type of observability that services don't have, like at the system level? Standards. So at an organization of our size and with multiple brands within the group, we saw lots of teams just doing their own thing. They create the metrics that they want, calculate it the way that they want, with the name that they want. So this makes it quite hard for an engineer from going to team A to team B, and then all of the observability is different. The metrics are different, the dashboards are different, the alerts are different. It makes hard to switch between teams. And it makes hard for us who are looking at this from high ground to understand, okay, I have this business flow which goes through 20 services, and everything at every single step, everything is different. So it makes it really hard to understand what the hell is going on. So working on standards, working with teams on standards, what does it make sense? Does this need to be a counter, or could this be a histogram, for example, because this was different from team to team? And of course, training, just teaching teams how to onboard this new library, how to use this platform, how to use this module from Terraform to auto-magically create an SLO, for example. And last but not least, create a reliability framework. We did have some teams already using SLOs, but okay, this is a feature of our SaaS offering. They were not really understanding what they were really doing. They were just creating, okay, I created an SLO in our platform. So working with teams more around, let's create SLOs. The way that we approached this, we started the other way around. So instead of going to teams and start creating individual SLOs for individual services, we started the other way around. Let's go to the business, start identifying critical business flows, and document it, and then go into engineering and say, okay, for example, let's use an example. Bed placement is very important for us, right? So a user clicks a button, it places a bed. Okay, what are the services that are involved to actually place a bed? Okay, this whatever number of services. Okay, what do these services need to export for me to have like a button that goes green or red, just says bed placement is okay or bed placement is not okay? Do I have that information? No, yes, whatever. If I don't, what do I need to add to those services? How do I have that observability that even someone that is not technical can understand if the business flow is working or not? And so on and so forth. So that's the kind of work that we've been doing a lot, is to focusing on that, adding the technical capabilities that would allow us to understand at the business level if we're being successful or not. Of course, there's still a very long way to go. We do have a lot of business flows, many of them asynchronous stuff that it's not really easy to actually measure even. So we are working a lot on that. And because SRE is no exception, more anti-patterns can arise within SRE, right? So the one that we've been talking about is this concept of rebranding the operations team. Okay, you do have some kind of ops team here now, SRE, but there are more. So some teams struggle with not having adequate observability. We touch a little bit about it here. So it's that thing like I'm on call, for example, I don't really have a way to find out what's happening. I do a change, I don't really understand if things got better or not. Another anti-pattern for SRE is not assessing user satisfaction. So not having that focus on the customer. So if I'm measuring if I want to make my system reliable, so I should be focusing on the perception that the user or my client has on my system. Poor incident management, so not having a good and well-defined process for incident management. A very popular one, becoming the SRE hero. So a person or a team that they are the heroes, so they solve everything, they do everything, and they are like the gatekeepers for the entire world, and that's also very common in some organization. And of course, also a very popular one, just poor automation, just doing the stuff manually, or not having like scalable engineering practices to actually build with stuff at scale. So quick summary, we just saw a brief introduction to SRE. We briefly touched on what are anti-patterns, this idea of something that we have good intentions with, but eventually down the line become into something that it's not really that good. We saw this concept of the rebranding the operations team. So you have a team, you just call it SRE, pretty much nothing else changes, and what are the problems with it? We then saw how a few of the things that we could do, and I then showed a little bit about some of the concrete things that we are doing inside FanDuel. And at the end, we saw there are a lot more SRE patterns, and some of those could be. So thank you very much. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Right there.
Thanks for the talk. I was just wondering, why is it an anti-pattern to become an SRE hero?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are several reasons why that's bad. First and foremost, probably the biggest one is that you siloed yourself, right? So most of those engineers or teams, they are the gatekeepers of that kind of thing. They are the only ones that can fix something. Or if it is a person, it's even worse. Like if you have I don't know if you read the Phoenix Project and you know the Brent character. So he's the only one who can do a certain thing. So when Brent misses, no one knows how to do that thing. So if Brent is responsible for doing a deployment, Brent goes missing, no one can deploy stuff. So it's that idea of you have like someone somehow siloed stuff that only that person or that group of people knows how to do. If they for some reason go missing, now what? And they actually do that experiment. So if you read the Phoenix book, they actually do that experiment. So they don't allow Brent to do something, and then chaos ensues, right? So we need to do this. Oh, Brent does that. Yeah, but Brent's not here. How the hell are we going to do this, right? And that's how you start building those models. So it's kind of an anti-pattern. That's probably the dangerous thing, is that you start relying a lot on that person or group of people, and then information doesn't disseminate. So you don't have a way to tackle if that person or group of people is not there anymore.
Okay, thanks. Can I ask one more question? If that's okay.
Sure.
The other question was like how to automatically create SLOs. You mentioned at some point, like how's that a concept? How can you automatically create that?
Yeah, so we focus first and foremost on the business side of things, but the reality is that we have similar or services that behave in a similar way. So they, in theory, I'll say in theory because it will be case by case, they should export the same type of metrics and they should behave more or less similarly. Apart from thresholds, for example, if I have an HTTP service responding on HTTP response, I should have some kind of latency SLO. The threshold probably will vary. So if I create something of that kind of service, I'm expecting that I should have that kind of SLO. Of course, that needs to tie into the bigger picture, but it's providing, for example, the Terraform modules that would create on our platform something very easy. If that can even be automated, if you use something like Backstage and you just click a button and creates a repository, probably you can already create like the code that creates like the latency SLO out of the box. You just provided a threshold and it's done. So the engineer doesn't have to worry about that's out of the box. It's just clicking a button and it's done.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, hello, thank you. I have two questions, maybe a bit tricky, sorry about that. But yeah, first one, what is your three main difference SRE for operation team?
For SRE from operations team? Okay. So I probably say that the biggest one is around having a reliability framework, right? So the idea, or let's put it this way, 20 years ago, we thought like the system is okay if it's responding. And we still see a lot of that. Yeah, I do like a ping, it's working. Not really, right? So if just because the service is up, it doesn't mean that it is working. The other one is around observability. So having, and it ties in with this one, is having that concept of, okay, observability is not just about having metrics or logs or traces. It's I can understand what the system is doing just by looking from the outside. I don't have to log into servers. I know functionally how things actually work. And the other is having scalable engineering solutions. So I think things have evolved, but you still have a lot about, okay, I can run this script from my machine. Okay, that's cool. But what if this scales from 10 machines to 1,000 to 10,000 to a million machines? Probably you won't be able. So you need to find a more software engineering approach to actually doing those kinds of things.
Yeah, great. Nice, thank you. And the second one about the frameworks you mentioned. So how do you think in new age, I mean AI age, do we need to change something in the SRE framework, or we can do legacy or current framework for the actually business application based on AI in a prod?
I think that AI will help a lot with this notion around what the reliability framework will do, because it can infer a lot of stuff in terms of we can just provide an AI with some kind of model, a bunch of data, and it will start to figure this thing out. I don't know if SLOs will be the future. I think that for most organizations they could work, and they work not even so much on the technical side, but mostly on how we are approaching things. So when you think about SLOs, you're thinking about your customer, right? So you're thinking your customer is defining what reliability means. It's not you, it's not me, it's not. Of course, we have a say in it, but it's okay. The user is using my system. How does it perceive that my system is reliable? Okay, so now I'll equip my observability stack with the data that I need to understand if the user is doing or not. For example, for most services, okay, am I giving like 200 responses within 2 seconds or something like that if the user is happy? I think that with time we'll probably evolve the SLO framework, but I think that at least for now, AI will enhance and make that even easier for us to find around our systems what could be meaningful SLOs. And we are already seeing some organizations trying to approach it that way, just building modules, just dumping data in there. Let's see what happens. Let's see what comes out of there.
See what happens. It's good pattern. Yeah, thank you.